little trash babies! I've done it. I've spread like a disease from Twitter to YouTube. If you're a new viewer, welcome to listening to my overtly British voice. If you've come here from Twitter and you're a long-term follower, this time my shitpost will be in audio form, and I will not apologise. It's good to be here, and I thought I would start the YouTube era off strong with a review of the newly released Pixar film Turning Red, which was released on Disney Plus earlier last month. I'm sure you've all heard of it, unless you've been living off-grid for the past month. It has been a much talk about topic online since the trailer dropped, and even more so since it started streaming. To summarise, seeing as some of you may have been off-grid for whatever reason, Turning Red follows Mei Lee, a 13-year-old Chinese-Canadian girl who lives in Toronto, Ontario in the year 2002. The film is a coming-of-age story where one morning Mei Lee wakes up to find that she is transformed into a giant red panda. And although she is able to turn back into a girl,
any strong emotion will release the panda.
The film was directed by Domi Shi, a Chinese-Canadian animator and screenwriter. I do hope I've got your name right. Disney Plus has also released a one-off documentary on the making of Turning Red called Embrace the Panda, and it's a really nice insight into the effort and team behind the movie. I do recommend giving it a watch if you've ever stuck for something to do. I guess it's the equivalent of having a making of DVD extra. Anywho, this movie has created some stigma due to the fact that the red panda is a metaphor for puberty and getting your period. I don't understand why that is such a stigma. Literally millions of people experience periods and puberty and hormones, but the absolute trash fire of parents and the older generation reacting to this is something to behold. There isn't a single mention of coochie. They don't even say the word period. There is literally a moment where May's mum said, "Did the red peony bloom?" which I thought was pretty dang funny. My mum was always upfront with the facts of life, but that being said, she still wouldn't say vagina and would refer to it as mini, or, less cutesy, my bits. Even now, I won't say the word on here for fear I'll be smote by the YouTube gods. Regardless of the on-the-nose metaphor, I thought it was handled delicately and relatably. Periods are a chaotic time for new teens. If we can't laugh at it and find common ground in normalising it, younger generations will still find themselves experiencing shame over something completely natural. To be honest, I'm not overtly surprised that the film has garnered such upset from older viewers. I mean, it's not for them. It is, after all, set in 2002, which is my generation. Very weird finding a film set in 2002 nostalgic. That was like 2 years ago. Wait, 2002 was 20 years ago? Regardless of how old I am, this film also has stigma from my generation, which is more surprising to me. The main criticisms from this demographic are the art style, which in my opinion is adorable and fun, being dubbed as bean mouth and cal art style. Come on, you cannot argue that this film's art style is unoriginal when Disney struggles with same face syndrome in some of their biggest movies. Domi Shi has even said that the expressions, effects, and movement are heavily influenced by anime. I feel like this is a great nod to people who were growing up in this decade as anime was increasing in popularity in Western society amongst young girls. And we can even see this when Mei Lee doodles hot anime boys in her notebook. Very relatable. The other criticism, however, is that making the character a 13-year-old Asian girl just isn't relatable enough. Which again, in my opinion, not a very good criticism when people fell in love and related to Zootopia and Monsters Inc. If people can relate to furries and literal monsters, you can find some common ground with an Asian 13-year-old girl. Just saying, we were all cringe at 13. That being said, you probably get the gist that I liked this movie. And I do. Let's get into the story and what I personally thought of Turning Red. Spoiler alert from this point on. I thought it was refreshing and sweet, and the actual antagonist being generational trauma was a surprisingly relatable touch. We all have baggage that we have been unintentionally passed down through the family, and it was quite impactful to see such a conflict represented in a way that doesn't portray the mother or the daughter as being a villain or a hero. The sweetest part of the story is that they are, at the end of the day, flawed, imperfect people, and they aren't inherently good or evil, just doing the best with what's been given to them. Even the grandmother, introduced as a terrifying presence in the story, is not evil. She is damaged, and arguably the most damaged character we meet. One of the problems in this movie is that we don't get a chance to explore that more. We see her scars physically, but we can also see them emotionally in the way she touches her scar when she discusses the rift between her and her daughter, Ming. It is implied that this injury was obtained through a similar rift to what is developing between Ming and Mei. I found myself wondering what caused Wu's attitudes, as she obviously loves her daughter, but this domino effect of harmful behaviour stemmed from somewhere along the family line, and it did not seem to come from as far back as their ancestor Sun Yi, as Sun Yi literally begged for help from the gods and turns into a fearsome beast to protect her family. So perhaps more context behind Wu would have elaborated more on the root of the generational trauma, not to justify it, but to offer clarity and an explanation on what can lead to this. I watched this movie with my partner and his brother, and one question that did pop up was, why is Ming's panda so big? I feel like that's a reasonable question, although I have to say that this does not necessarily warrant a direct answer from the movie itself. I like that it is not explained, and I initially believed on first impressions that this was because she was older. Mei wasn't quite an adult yet, so of course Ming would have the bigger panda. But after the reveal of Wu and her daughter's pandas and how they were still very much dwarfed by Ming's, I feel like there's an error here that is open to interpretation. I actually perceived it as the degree of the repressed feelings becoming unleashed. I even wondered at first if it was because Ming had buried her panda for so long, but this was dismissed by Jin, Mei's father, stating, "I told you she was big." It's a bit jarring that the climax of the story is practically a big fluffy kaiju battle, but the crescendo of emotions and the inevitable explosion matches the size of the scene very well. It didn't feel out of place to me, and I even laughed at the initial reveal of Ming's panda slowly striding between the buildings towards the concert. Also, did anyone else note that Ming said, "You only have one chance to banish the panda, otherwise you're stuck with it forever," only for there to be multiple rituals on the night of the red moon? Can they just opt out whenever there is a red moon, because that's definitely not one chance, just saying. But overall, I liked the relationship between the friend groups, and I liked their cringy obsession with Four Town. I was never into boy bands per se, but I had an emo phase, and My Chemical Romance was probably pretty close. I loved Mei. She was very likeable, even when she loses her temper and nearly mauls her bully Tyler. I won't deny fantasizing about humiliating my own bullies when I was her age. No doubt if I had an emotional panda that exaggerated my feelings, I might have mauled somebody too. I mean, I wanted to be a werewolf in school, so the capacity was there. I'm still waiting for that werewolf transformation to kick in, by the way. It's got to be any month now. And I gotta say, Mei drawing hot anime boys was so amusing to me. I distinctly remember having a sleepover at my friend's house with a group of other friends, and we wrote and drew anime smut and hid the paper under the sofa when her mum came in with snacks. It was so spot on. I looked at the screen and was like, that me. Also, Mei with her flute case, I learnt flute in school too. That me. There is so much more I can say about Turning Red, but this is my first real YouTube analysis, and I don't want to get too carried away. To summarise, Turning Red is fun and cute and imperfect, just like the characters, but that's what hit home for me. Please give it a watch, it's such an enjoyable movie. I'm absolutely going to force my mum to watch this, because I'm sure when I was a teenager, she absolutely struggled with me. If you lovely trash babies stuck around this long, thank you so much for listening to what I have to say. Right now, I'm officially starting out and all comments, likes and subscribers are very appreciated. Go make yourself a cup of tea on me and have a great weekend. This is Raccoon, come chat again soon.